Kicking off hour number 2 with one of our favorites, former Husker, Michael Rose-Ivey. Michael, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, man. It's Friday, got a game tonight. So it's a lot easier to get up on Fridays than it is Monday and Thursday.
Am I right? Like I'm in an exceptionally good mood, right? You know how these days go. They're long for coaches because we're not going to be done till 10. But when you get up, man, you're just full of juice. So a lot of times I have a hard time dialing in. So you're going to have to bear with me if I get a little squirrely, okay? We got a big one tonight too.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And got another one on Saturday too. So it's gonna be a fun weekend of football.
So we're kind of dialing in now. I'm breaking down. Well, I'm not necessarily. I'm trying to through radio talk a little bit about what makes Colorado that offense and how TCU played it so mind-boggling, right? With
right.
I mean, you see it now, right? With some of these mesh concepts and the 4 vertical principles. TCU's lack of adjusting to how they wanted to play it from a coverage standpoint. When you're watching that unfold, was that more about Colorado and their concepts for you, or more about TCU and how they defended it over time?
Definitely a mixture of both. And I'll be honest, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of the kind of stubbornness Bo had with running match stuff.
Yeah, yep.
That's exactly what it felt like. At a certain point, you got to let your guys spot drop. Now, I'm not even a big fan of spot drop, but with as much mesh and them getting a running back involved, I mean, you're having safeties have to communicate with linebackers about passing off tight end, running back, and then we got to factor in, hey, there's a slot receiver on the other side of the field, right? Who was the number 2 receiver to the weak side now becomes a number 3 or number 2 receiver to the strong side now. So it was definitely mind-boggling. I think that was one thing. That I looked at. I looked at it more so as TCU. Now, I definitely saw, Colorado's offense and the explosiveness and, type of scheme they can run, and be successful over the whole, season. But I definitely look at TCU and kind of where they were and kind of the lack of adjustments they didn't have. And it was more measurement on them, but no question about it. Colorado's offense is explosive.
Michael, you mentioned some of the things that TCU didn't do. What are some of the ways you'd like to see Nebraska's defense kind of match up or attack this Colorado offense? Are we talking about bringing plus pressure? Are we talking about running some zone concepts? Like, when you watch what Colorado does, what do you think would work best against them?
I think the biggest thing is you got to find out with Shedeur what confuses him. He just looked too smooth, poised, composed back there. Even when he did get flushed, like he made the comment, the only difference between FCS and FBS is how fast the D-line get off blocks and scramble. And if that was his biggest, uncomfortable, level of comfortableness on Saturday, then that's a problem. That's another thing TC's probably looking at. We got to get him off the spot. I think Nebraska, I think the same thing. I'd be weary of them kind of sitting back. Now that's the thing though. Now I'd be weary of them sitting back and dropping 60% of the time on pass. Because I do think you have to, as much as you want to have more bodies to cover, I think you do got to put some pressure on them and get them off their spots, make some off-platform throws. So I think it's got to be a mixture of all. I think the D-line's going to have to, generate some pass rush themselves in some situations, especially on some third and longer situations where it's like, hey, let's try to, it's coverage over, pressure. So let's put 3 over 2 on each side and let's just be able to bracket the deepest route and play it from there. I'm very interested to see how Omar Brown plays. He had a really good game against Minnesota. I don't know if it was surprising, but he really stood out to me.
His physicality in the box was extremely surprising.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean,
because they're using him as a run fitter.
Right. And I think where he matches up, they got 4 guys. Obviously, they had 100 yards last week. With Weaver, Hunter, and Horn. You're gonna have to take 2 and take out 1. You know what I mean? Let one guy kind of get his thing going, and then kind of isolate and control those other 2 guys. But it's a lot of weapons out there. It's gonna have to be a big mixture. But I would definitely advise not being too conservative and giving him too much time, because he can dial it up and he can be surgical back there, as we saw last week.
It's a numbers game, right? If you know this from Coach Pelini, right? He was a big +1 guy, that bracket principle. You always want 1 extra. If with an odd front, with a 3-man front, If Nebraska, let's say, brings 2, it's still 5 for 5, right? You'll have to single
Right.
block everybody, but you're still +1 in coverage because you have 6 back for at most 5 receivers. How do you think that concept kind of works with what we may see tomorrow?
I think that's going to look more like, running your single high stuff. If you're going to be in your cover threes and cover ones. And the problem with that, especially with cover one, is you're going to give your safety obviously a middle field principle to start off with. But game plan wise, it's like, okay, who do we shade you to? It's like, if you got Horn and Weaver in the slot plus Edwards in the backfield, I think that's where the biggest matchup is. Honestly, they kind of
But in the number 2 receivers,
not even number 2 receivers. I think our linebackers on Edwards in the passing game. I think that's going to be a big one, especially if we are able to cover and put more guys on the back end and double up on the outside on the number 2s. The check down is there. They're going to get Edwards the ball. I think the Wilkerson guy, he's more of a runner for him, but I think how our backers do against the running backs, that's going to be a big key. And I think too, man, everyone's talked about. I just popped out at me. Everyone talked about online. All we got to do is run the ball, run the ball. TCU was 37 carries for 262 yards, 7.1 yard average. It's not as simple as just run the ball. Even still with running the football, Colorado had time possession by over 9 minutes. So it's not going to be as easy as run the ball. I think they're going to have to play some complementary football, offensively, defensively. Turnovers can't happen. Definitely can't happen in this game. But it's going to be an interesting game. I'm very interested how they defensively, how Nebraska tries to stop them, but more so offensively, how do they generate something else besides Sims running the football? So I think as he got going a little bit, you start to see some flashes of some 3, 4, 5, 6 yard runs from other guys, but I think consistently, in order for them to win and be successful, they got to get somebody else involved and some separation of receiver. And it hurts. We have to. I forget the kid's name. He tore his ACL this week, so some young guys got to step up. So it's going to be very interesting.
Now, I hate to act like this isn't always been a big stat, but sometimes it's overlooked in terms of in the grand scheme of things. Is third down stops and conversion rates bigger in this game than, let's say, it normally would be, or is it just what it is?
That's interesting because I honestly think this will be a game where a lot of 4th and 2s. You know what I mean? I think it's going to be a lot of
teams can stay on schedule.
Yeah. If teams can stay on schedule, I see both teams being very aggressive, trying to really kind of impose a physical and psychological will that, hey, we feel very confident about what we have, and we're going to go out and do what we need to do to get those yardages. But I think it's situational. I think third down has become so situational now that fourth down, people going for it on fourth down is much more prevalent. It really is situational, you know what I mean? And it almost is like you say, you're playing a 4-down mentality. We're just not trying to allow them to get, originally 10 yards and 3 downs. But now it's, hey, they got all 4 down. Defensively, do we want to be as aggressive on a 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 3, right? And we may give up a bigger play because, we're bringing guys to the line of scrimmage. So I think it matters situationally. I think you saw that with Minnesota. I mean, Nebraska wasn't terrible offensively or defensively on 3rd down, but it wasn't enough, for us to be able to get over that hump and get that win and get some stops and get off the field and give the offense, better field position. So it's definitely something that's situational.
It's the last time you remember 2 teams, and maybe this is how you get, almost 1,200 yards between the 2. Colorado was 9 of 15 on 3rd down. TCU was 10 of 17. Colorado 2 of 2 on 4th downs. It doesn't take long to figure out how you may get an extra 4 or 5 minutes time of possession. But when you factor in TCU going -2 in turnovers, you can get to 9 in a hurry with the new clock.
For sure. Yeah, you can. And, I mean, TCU missed 2 opportunities to even score in the red zone to score a touchdown or even get a field goal.
And Colorado was 4 for 4.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And that's where I think the easy stats are looking at, obviously yards, touchdowns, first downs, all that stuff. But I think that's where the true story is told in the box scores right there is, when you get to the red zone, obviously you want to score a touchdown, but you got to get a field goal, especially when you got an offense that's dealing like that. You're losing time of possession already, even while you're running the ball, controlling the clock, all that good stuff. That's where, again, the situational part, you have to be able to be dialed in. And again, Nebraska was going to get judged on that this week, just like they got judged on the, one possession loss, they're going to get judged on situation. Hey, can we get on the, off the field on third down? Can we stay on the field on third down offensively? And if we got to be out there for fourth down, can we convert it? Or can we get the job done and get off the field? So, you definitely, like you said, I think convert those third downs and those fourth downs. You guys get more time possession, and it just blends more. It's more favorable for Colorado, to have that ball in their hands because they're just so explosive.
Michael, it seems like Colorado this week has rather enjoyed their time in the national spotlight. If you were on that coaching staff, how concerned would you be that maybe they're not focused enough on the task ahead of them?
When I don't want to say chaos, I guess, but when you create an environment, the Deion's created, they drop a video every day. His son,
sometimes multiple.
Multiple. Yeah, Junior is a magician with the camera. He's gonna get something up on Twitter every day. So for them, it may for any other team, for like a Coach Saban, the rat poison, we're not buying into the hype. We're not buying into the hype. I could see that for that team, but for a Deion Sanders-led team, look good, feel good, play good, all that good stuff, guy, show me the money, all that great stuff. Like I think they're good with handling hype. Now, obviously, you got to go out there and improve and play, but I don't think psyche would be something I'll be concerned about because as a coach, this is the environment I created. I told you guys I'm bringing Louis V luggage the first meeting, right? So it's a different mentality. It's a different way of doing things, and it works for them. Week one, and we'll see how they respond. But as a coach, if we create this standard, we create this environment, you got to live in it. That's what you're giving your players, and told them this is what they're allowed to do, allowed to be a part of. So
another reason why I think Nebraska has more than a puncher's chance in this one is, how many people do you think realize, or maybe I should ask you, within how many yards difference, MRI, do you think Colorado's yards per completion was against TCU different than Nebraska's yards per completion against Minnesota?
I would say 12 plus.
Listen, Colorado was completing 10.6 per. Nebraska against Minnesota, 10.1. Did
really?
Nebraska exactly? Exactly. Does that surprise you that Nebraska's efficiency when balls were completed was as chunky as it was? That's a nice little hidden stat.
And you obviously got to say that Colorado passes more than Nebraska, so it ended up working itself out number wise. But I will say now that I look back on it, when Sims made the right decision and got the ball where it needs to go, like you said, you were picking up that 8 to 13 yards,
right?
So I think that's where again it boils down to the decision making is like we were in good spots, we were in some manageable third downs and things like that. Things that we just talked about Colorado doing to keep the clock, keep the ball moving, keep control of the game. It's just a decision making, and I think I don't know, it just could be optimism, but I really feel like Sims is going to come out.
Me too.
I really do. I really do because he's very cerebral. You look at him and Shedeur. Obviously, Shedeur has shown himself to be a little bit more of a natural passer, but very similar build and just even mentality. I think they carry himself with a confidence. It's not too braggadocious, but it's like, hey, I know who I am. I know what I can accomplish. I know the type of player I am. I'm honestly expecting Sims to kind of have a little bit of a breakout game. I think he's seen some live game action for this, week one last week. He knows what he needs to do, and I think Rhule's going to be one of those guys that, one of those coaches that can make that big week one from week two jump. So we all know that's when you're going to make the biggest improvement and see, really as a team, can we handle adversity, or like we talked about earlier, can we handle success? So I'm expecting Sims to play well.
So, Michael, I'm curious what you saw from Sims in week one against Minnesota that gives you that confidence, because obviously the storylines are about the 3 picks and kind of him staring down some receivers. So what did you see? Obviously the QB run game, I thought he made terrific reads basically in all of those situations. But in the passing game, what did you see that gives you some confidence to say, hey, he might actually do okay here?
I think what the biggest thing was a little bit of the separation. I think, too, with the route contest, Minnesota was sitting pretty heavy, especially at the safety. That 27 kid.
Newman's the real deal.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's gonna be a guy. And I just think for Sims, he, like you said, he had some throws, that were kind of on time throws, right on time hit, right on third, second step, whatever it needs to be. Obviously the run game is there. I just think the makeup of what Rhule is building and just always constantly improving and even talking about it is like, hey, we're not going to harp on this. This isn't even talking about, the statistic of losing, one possession, 1 point games, all of that. Hey, this is an indictment, on this team. It's not an indictment on every other team that, failed to do that, and I think just that mentality of moving forward and not really harping on it, I think that's going to give Sims a little bit more, confidence and going into this week. Obviously, a big opportunity for him. I think he'll recognize the opportunity at the hand.
MRI, are you subscribing to the theory that Daniel Jackson Jr., Corey Crooms, Brevin Spanford, Elijah Spencer, those guys got to take a back seat to Colorado's receiving core? Because the narrative that I keep hearing this week is that, like, this is some varsity to JV transition for Nebraska.
No, I think that receiver core was pretty good. Definitely going to be up there. I think in the Big Ten, you look at Penn State's got a couple of guys. Obviously, Ohio State's got a receiving core that's rivals some NFL teams. But I think they're within the top 3 in the Big Ten. Obviously Daniel Jackson showed himself as a playmaker. So did the other guys who needed. They were even down one of their better receivers,
Altman Bell.
Yeah, so I think for them. It's definitely. I think more so the way the offense operates. I mean, that's the best way. People are going to look at the optics. What does it look like? They're out with more speed, more spread. More yards at the catch, probably opportunities when you talk about Colorado's offense. But I just look at the skill sets. And like I said, they got some good quality receivers. And maybe a little bit more twitch maybe than Jackson and some of those other guys in Minnesota. But I think as far as skill level, I think they're all comparable. Like I said, I think the biggest matchup is that 3 seconds is gone in that pocket. Who's on the line, who's on that running back? Because I think that's going to be a big key for them, especially like we talked about 3rd and 4th down to try to keep the clock moving.
Michael, so let's kind of sum a lot of what we've talked about up here this morning. Kind of give me your path to victory for Nebraska against this Colorado team.
There's got to be special teams and defense. I think you take the air out of take the air out of the crowd. We win the coin toss. Let's receive it. Let's go 8 minutes down the field and really set the tone. That would be great. But I really think it's got to be defense and special teams. They got to win not only the time possession, which I think can be a little bit overrated, but more so the field position. Where are they starting their drives at? On kickoffs and after turnover on downs or turnovers, right? And where's the defense starting the drive at? Those are 2 stats just becoming the head coach. Honestly, that I didn't. You realize how important. Obviously, we saw the 40 got 60 yards to go, but statistically, how much improvement in your probability of actually scoring and getting points, but even just flipping the field, being able to get the ball on the other side of the field. So I think Rhule, I think that's going to be their big mindset is defense, controlling the field, trying to control time possession, but at the end of the day, time possession doesn't win ball games, scoring does. So putting points on the board, playing penalty free, obviously eliminating turnovers, but not playing too tight, obviously where we're not trying to take chances on the big play. I think we got to let some of these younger receivers, they got to show us what they got this week. If they're going to be in the rotation. You look at, some of those guys we've heard some good reports about, but obviously when the lights come on, 60% of the stadium is filled with Buffalo fans, and they're excited about it. We got to make sure we're ready to play. So I think it's going to be defense, special teams. I think with a little bit of blood flowing with the rivalry and just what's going on, I think it'll be really good.
So we saw this a little bit and I'll get you out of this with Wisconsin and how you guys like to play defense and how they use motion to dictate counter for short edges and putting DBs in run fits in 14, 15, things like that with how Bo liked to play defense. What do you think about if the premise is making linebackers cover and corners tackle? You can situationally put guys like Travis Hunter intentionally in run fits to maybe shave some of that endurance off of reps per game. How much do you think that will be a focal point for Nebraska to make the secondary tackle based on how they'll formation Colorado?
Yeah, I think how they're going to use Hunter will be interesting. I mean, there's no way he can play 120 snaps each week. But if he's able to, I mean, you got to be able to focus on him. He's a guy that definitely can be a playmaker. I think The biggest thing is I don't necessarily think shifting the coverage towards him. I think mainly really just play what you play. I mean, because if you shift the coverage, I mean, again, you got two other options in Weaver and Horn that obviously can hurt you, and then Edwards as well at the backfield.
I just would try to wear him out defensively by making him fit in the run game.
Oh, you're talking about him on defense.
Yeah.
Okay, you're talking about him. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would get in some nub formations. Tight end, only on one side, and let's run the ball to the side, make them have to come up and force it flat. Bubble screens, make them have to come off blocks and tackle. Trying to get him on motions. I mean, anything you can get him to moving. So, I agree. If he's on defense, trying to get him in the run strip, try to make him be a physical guy and see if he can take that toll.
I'll walk our listeners through nub sets. That's a big deal because if you spill, it's got to go to him.
Got to go to him. Yeah. But then the thing is, if you can't box it because now you leave he's there for a reason. He has to fit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you box it, I mean, you got an A-gap hitter right up the middle in the marching band playing.
Hitting heads on goalposts. I love it, man. One of the greatest segments in radio, man. We appreciate you willing to do it.
No, I appreciate you guys.
Thanks. But hey, good luck tonight. Or actually, best wishes. I don't believe in luck.
Yeah, best wishes. There you go.
All right, my guy. Yes, sir.